up, fellow enthusiasts? This is my review on Fury 325 and Carowinds. So this is what is known as the B&M giga coaster that opened in 2015 at Carowinds in Charlotte, North Carolina. When this was built, I was so excited for it, but I didn't have an opportunity to ride it because I just didn't have the money. I was a broke college kid. Um, I remember watching YouTube videos, just feeling so much envy and just wishing to God just for a chance. And I didn't get to ride it until 2021, but in that time, um, I was able to get other credits. My mother moved to Dallas. I followed her after college, but in that time going to visit her, I got to, go over Texas and Fiesta, Texas, and then Steel Vengeance opened in 2018. And when that opened, I thought that nothing could beat that. I thought that ride was unbeatable. I thought that was the best coaster possible. And then Orion opened in 2020 at my home park, and when Orion opened, I felt like that kind of quenched my thirst for Fury because I always wanted to experience a B&M from 300 feet. I always, wanted to know what that felt like, and Orion kind of quenched that thirst. And then after that, I went skydiving, and I feel like skydiving completely smokes coasters. Like there's just no comparison. So Iron Gwazi kind of became my new number one obsession. I really wanted to ride that. Um, didn't get to ride that until 2022 because of the COVID delay from SeaWorld. So Fury ended up being my backup plan. And it was probably one of the only parks open at that time. So, I flew into Charlotte for the first time, and the first time I saw it, I was really tired because I didn't get to the hotel until midnight. I stayed at this new Spring Hill Marriott, and it's just right by Carowinds, and I was just so tired. I really didn't get a view, but when I woke up and went down for breakfast, I saw that treble clef right outside the hotel window, and then that's when reality kind of hit me that, after all these years, Fury's just right in front of me, and I had been through a lot, a lot of tough days. I worked my behind off to get in a position to be able to travel. So, like, just walking up to Fury, just thinking, man, how did I'm really here. This is real. It's crazy when you watch a coaster on the internet for so many years and then you see it in real life. That's always such a cool moment. And walking up to the entrance just felt so surreal. This isn't just another YouTube vlog. This is really happening. And I sat in the front row for my first ride, and as I started to go up the lift hill, I kind of thought, oh, this doesn't seem, taller than Orion or Millennium Force. Because I think the angle at it is not as steep as maybe Orion. And you're not really over anything, like you're just in the field, so it didn't feel like that feeling of doom like Millennium Force had. And so it's a very quick lift. There's a lift hill announcement, and one cool thing is you have a beautiful view of Charlotte. Once you get to the top, and at night you can see all the city lights. You're real close to the airport. You can see all the airport, all the planes flying and landing. So that's a pretty cool view that you kind of get towards the top. This is the tallest lift hill in the world, too. Traditional chain lift at 325 feet, as the name suggests. So I think you get up in about 40 seconds. Once I got to the top, I was in the front row. This crest is angled in a way that you are at the max angle for the majority of the drop. So I just remember coming over and not being able to see where I was dropping. It's very similar to Orion, is where to a point where you just feel like you're just plunging straight towards the ground because of the angle. And with those clamshell receipts, you just feel like you're falling for an eternity. And it was blissful. It was everything that I wished for and more. Um, it's hard to describe. Just this feeling of just plunging towards the ground, total freedom. Um, and then once I hit the bottom, this is where the ride kind of really shocked me. Um, I wear contacts, and I've never had my face warp and my cheeks flap on a ride before, so I felt like my contacts were gonna come out of my eyes, like I could feel them moving. And one thing that caught me so off guard about Fury is that it doesn't look like it's going that fast, and it doesn't look like that forceful of a ride, off ride. But when you're on it, you are just blazing. And probably the most underrated moment of the ride is the first overbank turn. I think it's 190 feet tall, but it doesn't feel like you're losing any speed going through it, and it's profiled so perfectly. And I was actually kind of afraid when I went through it because you have such an abrupt transition to where you're just hanging sideways. And so at that moment, I'm hanging on to my clamshell as hard as I physically can because, it just caught me so off guard. Like that overbank is perfect. Like it's perfectly profiled. And I don't know how B&M got that to work. I think B&M. This is one of the rides. This is one of these coasters where just B&M was in their bag, and they hit on everything. And then this low to the ground section before that treble clef is the most blissful coaster experience I've ever had. Like you were going so fast. It's hard to see. I know it says it goes 95, and then another thing I was told that it runs slow in the morning. It felt like it had to have been 100. That ride. I know it was hot that day. It was mid 80s and it was humid. That ride feels like it's going upper 90s to 100, and those little S curves, the first two, they look like nothing, but when you're going so fast, they're so forceful. And so I felt like I was going to come out of the train like the entire first half, of the ride. And then I hit the treble clef. And that's insane because you kind of twist up and then dive down. And then the way it's profiled, like you just get yanked out of your seat. And that was another moment I was thinking, oh my God, am I really going to come out of this train? And then after, as this is happening, I'm thinking this is incredible. But the moment that started to close the deal for me was the trimmed airtime hill. Um, when I went over that hill for the first time, that's the moment it hit me, and I just said, this is better than Steel Vengeance. This is number one. It's over. Like at that moment, it was over because it felt like you were gonna run off the track. That's another thing. People, say the second half of Fury, isn't that good or it's forced. So the second half is what closed the deal for me because those three hills might look like they're ordinary. They might look like they're forceful, but when you're on them, those little hills are better than any B&M hyper hill. And it because of how fast that train is going. And I know the Helix gets a lot of hate, but I really don't. I mean, the rest of the ride is so perfect, so I really don't care. But I remember hitting that break run for the first time, and I was completely delirious, and I just thought I've got to do this again. And I don't know how many times I've written this from 2021 to 2025 because I don't have the mental capacity to keep track of how many rides I get on a ride. But I would guess it's in the thousands. Like I fly to Charlotte every year ride this thing. I'm gonna go in April. It's kind of like a tradition of mine now. Like spring break is Carowinds, so I'm gonna go early April again. And it's not as crazy as it was in 2021 because 2021 I wasn't used to it. So those first two trips, it was absolute bonkers. Like it got to the point where I was drooling at times because the wind in my face was so strong. Like I said, like my body's kind of gotten used to this sensation now. Um, and at night, the second time I came, I didn't get to ride it at night the first time because they closed early for fireworks. Long story there, but the night ride is incredible because you get the view of the city lights, and then that drop. It feels like you're dropping into a tunnel, like you're dropping into the event horizon of a black hole, and then you fall for an eternity, and then you're just blazing. Um, so this is my number one. This is the best coaster I've ever ridden. It's such a joy to get to ride it. I thought I was worried that it might be overrated, but because of a lot of coasters, you overhype and then you get enthusiasts that overhype, and but this one delivered like no other. This one did everything it was said to do, and I remember listening to a video by Rob Decker from Dreams and Screams when those used to come on, and the one thing he said was, this is a 3 minute 25-second moment in time that you'll never forget, and it totally was that. Like this ride delivered like no other coaster. It's a joy to get to ride it. I can't wait to ride it again. It never gets old. You never, no matter how many times I ride Fury, it never feels like enough. It was a great. It was probably that first ride on Fury is probably the highlight of my whole 20s, other than skydiving. Um, it was well worth the 6 year wait I had to wait for it. It was more than worth it. It was better than I could have ever imagined. You know, Another thing that was said that this was the pinnacle of B&M. It's absolutely true. This is B&M's masterpiece. It, like I said, they were in their bag, and I don't know how you really top this. And it's not just because of the height. It's the layout is just so perfect, and it doesn't look like it. It doesn't look that special after the first drop, and it doesn't even look like it's going that fast. But when you're on it, it's just hauling. And this ride is worth. This is one of those rides that's it's worth a hotel booking on its own. Like one guy said, and I thought he was crazy. He was like, I don't care if everything is closed, but Fury is open. It's worth a trip. And I never really understood that way of thinking until I rode it, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. It really is. And this park has other good rides. I think Intimidator or Thunderstriker is really good, and that ride's kind of underrated. And then Copperhead Strike. But the rest of the park, unfortunately, is there's a bit of a drop off there. But their top three is really really good. And Afterburn, that's a solid invert. But for me, when I come to Carowinds, I just come to ride Fury, Thunderstriker, and Copperhead Striker. Like I'll literally just spend all day riding those three. And another funny thing about Fury is, so many people marathon it. Like you see the same people all the time. By about 5 o'clock, the park will close at 10. By about 5 o'clock, the fast lane line will just be full of enthusiasts, and so you'll be waiting 20, 30 minutes, and it's always worth it. One thing to be aware of is there is no preferred seating. They're really strict about it. So if you want to get the front row, I'd recommend coming early in the morning because they don't play. It's really strict it, and I hate it. I think it's dumb because every other ride, you can pick your seat. Even Velocicoaster, you can pick your seat, but with Fury, they're really strict about it. Um, and even if you ask, like, it's just not happening. The only way to really be able to pick your row is you sometimes they won't have a grouper. That'll be the time to pick your row, but when they have a grouper, it's just not happening. Like, you're just gonna have to go where they tell you to go. And this is a front row ride. You know, I know a lot of people like the back row, but for me, this is a front row ride. Everything is just way more forceful. Um, but anyhow, thanks for listening. If you want more, subscribe, and have a great day.